Hello. Welcome along to episode 233 of Adventures in Pop. My name is Simon Jacobs, and you are very welcome. I've got an album coming out at the end of next week, which makes it, I think, June the 27th, 2025, if you're coming back to this from another planet in a faraway, distant age. And as I have said on one previous occasion, having an album is quite a big. It's quite a big moment. It's a bit of a statement. It's a collection of your best, most recent songs. And okay, so look, it's not entirely novel for me because this is, he says very proudly and with a little bit of swaggeriness, this is my seventh album. So, well, let me just say, my first album came out in 2017, and I've kept up mostly one a year since that time. And in recent years, I've been doing this thing, as you well know, of releasing virtually every track as a single, trying to release them 4 or 5 weeks apart and just keep them coming. Because there is a thing about building momentum. It does seem to be, real and true, and it's worthwhile. So here we go. We are now moments away from the seventh album, and I want to explain a little bit of some of the decisions, the thought processes I've gone through to get to this point, and also reintroduce to you, in case you're not abundantly familiar with the first 3 tracks. So we'll just go back and take a little look at the first 3 tracks, and in the next video I'm going to move on to tracks 4, 5 and 6, etc. And then eventually next week you're going to get tracks 11 and 12, which are new, and you won't have heard those before, I don't think. You may have heard an earlier version. There may have been an earlier version that I've posted at some point, but the final track listing, the 11 and 12 are the kind of the new tracks coming out with the album next week. So, decisions, the things you have to kind of think about when you're putting the whole album out. Well, we've touched on it already just there, is how many tracks do you release beforehand? How many tracks do you save up as part of the fabulous surprise of releasing the album? And in my case, I would have released 10. And look, one of the reasons for this is about the way that Spotify's editorial works. You can only pitch one song at a time. It has to be a new song, and therefore I have to wait until number 10 of this album, which was If I Can Love Again, was released, which was a week or so ago. Then I'm allowed to pick out one of the tracks that remain on this album that haven't been released to kind of put in Spotify's way to let them have a look at it and see if they want to promote it in any way. So I have to make a choice between those last couple of tracks about which one I think is more Spotify editorial worthy than the other, and I've done that, and we'll come on to that next week. So those are some of the choices at the beginning. The other things kind of stands to reason is, as you go through the release of your album and you're releasing single after single, there's quite a bit of thought that has to go into the look, the presentation, and particularly I'm talking about the cover art. So you will notice a very strong similarity between all of the singles that have been released off this album, Might As Well Dance, because they all look virtually the same. And I quite like doing this. I quite like making it very clear that they're all part of this kind of one family. So before I start releasing the first single of a new collection, it's going to be an album, I've already thought about cover art for each of the singles. I probably know what all of those tracks are going to be. Sometimes there's a little bit of last minute movement, so I've got to give myself a little bit of leeway to change things at the last minute. But as well as all the cover art for each of the singles that gets released, of course, you've got to make sure you've got your cover art for the album that needs to also mirror, in my case, literally mirrorball the same kind of design as the singles. So it's not going to surprise you that Might As Well Dance is going to have an album cover with a big mirror ball on the floor, just like all of the singles. Okay. What else do you have to think about? I think one of the other things is, are you going to keep the same track listing, the same order of songs occurring on the album, 1 down to 12 in my case, as I have done in terms of, in the release schedule, in the order that I've released them? And I haven't always stuck to that, but in this case, I can't see a valid reason to mess with it. So I'm pretty happy to go with an album that is in exactly the same order as the singles have been released. So that was easy. And then I think you do have an opportunity, if you've released a single and you're thinking somehow that didn't sound quite right, I'm still not happy with the overall sound, you do have an opportunity to mess with it again. You can remix and stuff, but one of the things I quite like doing is making sure that when I put out the album and I'm filling all the information in on DistroKid in my instance, I like to keep the same ISR number so that the system knows that this track on the album is the same as one that has been released as a single. Just helps with the kind of data management. All right, so look, enough of that. That's the kind of boring stuff, but it's kind of important if you're about to release your first album or your second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever. I would urge you to be thinking about the branding and the track order and what you can pitch to Spotify, etc., etc. Those are quite important decisions, right? The first track from Might As Well Dance came out last August. So here we are, coming up towards the end of June, and I've managed to get those, 10 single releases into the space of about 10 and a half months. So that's okay. That means that I've kind of kept it up through the whole year of, release every 4 or 5 weeks. That's lovely. Okay, so the first track from this album was called You Do You. And without going into lots of detail, all I would say about You Do You is it felt very appropriate as a first track, as an opening track for this album. It felt like a bit of a statement. It's quite big, it's quite fun. I like the words as well. That's not always the case, but I like a good mix of words that fit with the rhythm and all the rest of it. And as I think the majority of the songs are on this album, I think if there's a theme, apart from the fact that they're more beaty and a bit more danceable than some of the tracks on recent albums, I think also they're all a little bit fun. That they're, apart from the very last track 12, which we'll come on to next week, I think 11 of the 12 songs on this album are a bit, they're kind of light-hearted. They're not too heavy. They're a bit tongue-in-cheek, some of them more obviously than others. They're not about incredibly important things, maybe apart from 1 or 2, and we'll come on to those as we go through, but mostly they're not. They're mostly not about something really important. They're quite often about totally made-up situations, but they were just fun to write. You Do You... well, first of all, I love the phrase. I think it was one of my nieces said to me, well, Simon, you do you and I'll do me. And I thought, oh, I just love that. I love that. So down it went, stored away, and, hey presto, a few weeks later or months later, there it is in a song. So it's quite a busy, it's quite a big number. It's quite a big statement, as I say, You Do You. And I want to play you just a little bit of it, and you'll remember it, of course. And it goes like this.
Be independent, but not self-obsessed. There are times to be active and times you should rest. Don't put on a show to make others impressed, 'cause nobody cares if you're not the best. Let go of the things that you can't control, but cherish your friends with your heart and your soul. Dance to the beat of your personal drum, and do something crazy to surprise everyone. You don't have to do what I say, 'cause I'm not a leader trying to show you the way. I'm not a policeman trying to lay down the law. I'm not a
2 is The Story Ends. Came out in September. And if I remember rightly, this just came from having a good tune in my head, which eventually became the chorus, which is the bit that goes, time for you to stop pretending, time for you to make amends. And that was quite fun. And it's a bit more kind of proper dancey, this one. And the video was largely taken, well, a lot of it was taken by my friend Jeff, who was sitting opposite me on a train hurtling through France. And you can see a bit of that right here.
There was a time that I bought all lies, and now the scales have fallen from my eyes. It's time for you to stop pretending. It's time for you to make amends. All the rules that you've been bending, this is where the story ends. It's time for you to stop pretending. The people around you aren't your friends. I don't know what you're intending. This is where the story ends.
Okay, and that brings me to the third track, and this is the last track I'm going to talk about in this little section. And this is the title track. This is the song, Might As Well Dance. Okay, this took me a long time to write. This was one of those awkward songs that wasn't instant in any way. It took quite a lot of hard work. I think at some point I gave up on it and then came back to it. And I wanted it to work for all kinds of wrong reasons. I liked the title. That's not really good enough, is it? I thought it was quite funny. I just think, Might As Well Dance. It's like, might as well, okay, right. I love that attitude. And that's what I was trying to capture in this. And so I was kind of determined to make it work, even if it killed me, which it nearly did. So track 3, it has got a nice, catchy, section which gets repeated a few times, that you want it, you got it. But it was, I don't know, it was a bit of a tricky one, this one. But we got there in the end, and it came out in September. As I say, third track on this album, and it goes like this.
You want it, you got it. Oh, I know that you deserve it, baby. You've seen it, you need it. You don't want to be the last to know. You wear it, maybe share it. Stay ahead of the curve now, baby. You rate it, update it, watch your influence grow.
So let's leave it there for now, but I'll be back with tracks 4, 5 and 6 very shortly, and then by the time we get into the end of next week, you'll have had the whole thing. And what I'll also do, and this is another thing which I think is really useful, is just put all the tracks together in the right order. When I say tracks, I mean put all the videos together in the right order. So basically, make one long continuous video that's got all 12 tracks in it in the right order. That it's like a playlist basically, but it's one long section, and it's there for anybody who wants to just very simply put the album on from beginning to end and watch it as a video, as a series of videos. Very simple thing to do and really worthwhile. It's just another way that people can find your work. And the last thing I'll say is that for the first time in for ages, I think I have had little forays into TikTok before. It's not my best subject. It's not my easy home territory. I've probably missed the TikTok boat to some extent, but what I've been doing over the last couple of days is putting snippets of all of the videos from this album, just keep it to this album, put them out on TikTok, and just seeing, what flies and what doesn't, or if any of them fly. A couple of them have got over 1,000 views, but I don't know with TikTok how to rate that. So, it seems very small to me, but we'll see. So you'll find a bunch of things under Simon Jacobs 1 on TikTok if you want to go and look. In the meantime, have a lovely week. Don't get too hot. It's very warm in the United Kingdom. And I'll see you very soon. Take care.